recruiting. I have a time constraint of 7 p.m. No elephants, and my expectation is to make significant progress. Also, we also have Dr. Helen Martin is here tonight to talk about PD, so she's a special guest at the table tonight.
I'm Will Rothenberg. I'm doing well. Missing, I think, on the TALC side, Sam, Kerr, there's probably some others. No time constraints, no elephants, expectation, significant progress.
Good evening, I'm Heather Leonard. I'm doing well tonight. I believe the missing have been noted. I don't have any time constraints except for our 7 o'clock. No elephants, and expectations, I'll go with significant progress.
Hi, I'm Kelly Letcher. I'm doing well. Missing has been noted. No time constraints, no elephants, and expectations is to make progress.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Legend. I'm doing good. Missing noted. No time constraints, no elephants, and significant progress.
Carl Burnside. Actually, I got the sciatic, so you might see me standing up a lot. That's the longer I sit, the more that sciatic nerve hurts. So it's all, if I'm standing up, I'm not getting ready to talk. I'm just trying to get comfortable. Missing's been noted. Time constraints just 7 o'clock. No elephants. Expectations. Yeah, make significant progress.
I'm Rachel. I'm, well, missing noted, no time constraints, and to make progress.
Jessica Duncan, I'm doing okay. Missing is noted, no time constraints, no elephants, and expectations also to make significant progress.
Good evening, I'm Ben. I'm great. Missing's noted, no time constraints, no elephants, and the expectations make significant progress.
Shannon Johnston, I'm great. No time constraints, no elephants, and expectation is to make significant progress.
Good afternoon, I'm Bonnie. I'm doing well. Missing is noted, no time constraints other than our 7 p.m. stop time. No elephants, and expectation makes significant progress.
Hi, I'm Mike Gatewood. I'm doing great. Missing's noted. No time constraints, no elephants. Expectation makes significant progress.
Hi, I'm Helen Martin. Happy to be here as a special guest tonight for professional development. I'm doing well. Missing's been noted. No time constraints, no elephants. Expectations, obviously, to make significant progress.
Good afternoon, I'm Elizabeth Peterson. I'm one of the directors at the union, and I'm sitting in for Kurt Fizone tonight. I'm doing well. Missing has been noted, 7 p.m. time constraint, no elephants, and I would also like to make significant progress.
My name is Kevin Daly. I'm the president of the Teachers Association of Lee County. I am slightly crusty, so I apologize for that in advance. Missing has been noted, time constraints 7 o'clock, elephants no, expectation to see if we can figure out what we actually agreed on.
Hi, I'm Jill Castellano, and I am a PCT at Varsity Lakes Middle, and I'm also the vice president of TALC. I'm doing quite well. So missing, I know we have some missing people, however, these lovely people, Sam, Shay, and Kerr, are with us on Zoom, and they are following along on YouTube. So they're here, so I have them, so they're watching and listening and participating via Zoom. My time constraint, 7 p.m. elephants, none, and, my expectation is the same as Kevin, figure out our agreements.
Hello, I am Anna Witten. I am a third grade teacher at Colonial Elementary. I am also the TALC secretary. I am pretty exhausted. Missing has been noted, no time constraints, no elephants, and the expectation would be to also figure out agreements.
Good afternoon, I'm Rashonda Hutchins Cologne, I'm the math coach at Franklin Park Elementary. Today, no time constraints, missing as noted, I have no elephants, and again, my expectation is to figure out agreements.
Hello, my name is Amy Johnson. I am a sixth grade language arts teacher at Mariner Middle School. I'm tired. February's been a long month already. Missing, Iris is here now, but I think Tara is missing. And Mario is missing. I have no time constraints, no elephants, and my expectations are to figure out agreements.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Iris Grimaldi, school social worker. I'm out of breath because I ran here. No time constraints. Missing has been noted. No elephants. And I hope to make progress.
Good evening, I'm Christina Starrett, and I am a kindergarten through fifth grade art teacher at Tortuga Preserve Elementary School. Doing well, exhausted as well, being fifth grade. No time constraints, no elephants, missings noted, and I would like to figure out agreements as well.
Good evening, my name is Bob Scovatullo, teach mathematics at Three Oaks Middle School. Doing okay. Missing has been noted. Time constraints, no. Elephants, none. And my expectations would be to follow through with any orange consensus circles.
Good evening, my name is Louis Fisher. I'm the director of bands at Gateway High School. I'm wore out. Missing has been noted. I do not have any time constraints or elephants, and expectation is same thoughts.
Tracy Bowler, I'm currently the assistant principal at Vineyard Springs Elementary School. I'm very excited to be the first time charting through negotiations. And this was noted, no time constraints, no elephants, and expectations. Yes, I would like to make significant progress. I'm Amy French. I forgot to I'm doing well though. This has been noted that I do not have any time constraints, sort of. I got to pop in real quickly and just start on the class. I do not have any elephants, and my expectations are to make significant progress. And with that, and here we have an agenda over here. And the first thing on the agenda is ESSER classroom public. Who would like to start?
Before we dive deep into that, can we ask for an executive caucus, please, for a few minutes?
Okay. Are you guys gonna go to
are you ready?
Okay, so we had a very good discussion about the ESSER classroom coverage issue and PD. And I will let, if Kevin would prefer, I would like Kevin to explain, I think, where we got to. I think there's been a misinterpretation of, at the secondary level, how many periods an individual is going to cover a day. And I think that's how we went askew. We have agreed to iron this out tonight and then take any issues relative to rotations for the principals to labor management on Wednesday of this week. But I'll defer to Kevin to discuss the formula, if you will.
Well, thank you. So I think for me, this is mainly a secondary issue, though there are probably outliers at elementary. I think Will had the numbers that over 80% of secondary teachers only have the ability to cover one period per day, and that's their planning period, thereabouts. And so when we talk about missed planning and coverage for 80% of the secondary staff, that happens at exactly the same moment. There are people like Jill sitting beside me and others who don't have full-time class loads that may be able to provide coverage more than one period a day at the secondary level. And I think that was kind of the process that hemmed us up. And so I'm going to share kind of what we talked about and kind of what we agreed to, and then if we need to caucus, we can caucus, all right? So the idea is if you, at the secondary level, provide coverage during your planning, which again is the only time 80-some% of the people can do it, you would get your hourly rate for the time you provided coverage plus $60 an hour for the time you provided coverage. And so practically speaking, that looks like this. Elizabeth and I make the same hourly rate, I cover and she doesn't. Currently, if we both make $300 a day, I cover, she doesn't, I make $350. Under the new rule, I cover and she doesn't, I make the $350 I made before with 60 on top of it, so I make $410 for that day, and Elizabeth makes $300. That's kind of the practical, simple, honestly, a principal secretary confirmed that with me today when I spoke to her about kind of what the math is. And so that's the opportunity for the one period coverage. Now, people like Jill and the coaches and the PCTs and things like that, they have an opportunity to provide more. They have a class load, and then they should have a scheduled planning each day. And so outside of that, there is an opportunity for those employees to provide coverage perhaps more than one period during their scheduled planning and perhaps another one. So during their missed planning, it's the hourly rate and 60. Same formula as before, just me and Elizabeth comparison, only one do. But if for some reason there's a second opportunity to cover that day, it's the $60 kicker only. Now, we also have the moving rotation model, where you should, and again, this language predates me, where administrators should have a list of people that are volunteered to cover each period, and then they should have a backup list that if the volunteers run out, they're the voluntolds. And so honestly, and Jill has expressed this before, that you should be able to go to your principal and ask to see the list, please. And there should be a list published. And so if you're looking at moving down the list of both the volunteers and the voluntolds, even the idea of Jill having to do 2 a day probably doesn't work out, because she might be on the volunteer list for second period, but not on third. That might be somebody else. So I'm sure I'm thoroughly confusing everybody. But that, I think, yes, Amy.
Can we just clarify that we have captured this correctly? Do you mind?
Okay.
Can we clarify that we captured this correctly? So we have continued SRP discussion. Rotations are under labor management. So we're talking about the planning period for secondary teachers.
The first time in the day this happens, they will get their hourly rate plus $60 for the first period of coverage. If they have to cover a second period, they'll just get the $60
On the same day.
on the same day.
Right, and again, 80-something% of the TALC bargaining unit is unable to provide coverage any more than one period a day, and it's probably more because I'm not sure if Will's numbers included those people that are excluded from the list, that being the special instructional unit. And so Will has his hand up, so he can.
I just want one more thing, and each school should have their volunteer list.
Should have their volunteer list and their voluntold list.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kevin is right. The numbers that we were looking at were just for non-classroom, so we didn't look at special instructional in there, but it is about 80% of the group, or 20% that are non-classroom. The other thing, and this is kind of a distinction in hashing it out, is that additional hourly rate is because of the loss of planning time. So the coverage is happening both periods, but you're only losing one period of planning because you only have one planning period to lose.
And another thing that Anna brought up that we talked about a little bit in the executive caucus was the idea around what happens on a half day, for half day coverage. Like, let's say we had to split the kids, or somebody at the elementary level had to cover for a half day. And so, you know, the language does say more than 2 hours is $375. And so a half day is more than 2 hours. And so, what's that, Anna? And so I think maybe we can work on labor management around that. Again, to be equitable and to ensure that not necessarily unlimited piles of money go as far as they can possibly go. We may have to talk about that. But again, I think tonight the idea was come with practical examples and have a long discussion about this is really what it's going to look like for somebody practically at the secondary level, because again, elementary seems to be less problematic than secondary. And so, is that satisfactory of what we spoke about?
I don't have a question when you recommend that if you explained it.
I believe so, yes. I'm gonna, Carl has a question, okay.
Okay, I have to bring up a point. I kind of disagree because honestly, secondary is pretty clear cut because we're not doing dividing of kids and some of the other intricate things. So help me understand because what was there is what my interpretation was.
Mr. Burnside, you did not share the interpretation of the majority of the people in charge of implementing and developing their own understanding.
Now you lost me more.
Your interpretation was in the minority of those people who were responsible for deciding what happens. Not everybody agreed with you. How does that sound? Not everybody agreed with you. And so secondary is where the rub was for coverage, not elementary. Even though it seems more complicated in elementary, secondary was where the rub was.
Okay, I guess I need examples of what the rubs are because I am totally lost.
The rub was if you covered during planning, you didn't get your hourly rate. You just got 60. So if Elizabeth and I covered and she didn't, I would get 360 and she would get 300. It was a misunderstanding about the compensation for missed planning went away.
Okay, and I guess my understanding was always what you just said, that it was going to be. So when you said I was wrong about that, I'm telling you that when we talked about it, that it was your hourly rate plus the $60 an hour. So I get, so you're saying that people misunderstood that?
I believe so. I believe that we did not appropriately explore it to ensure everyone understood.
So you really talk about communication?
Communication and implementation are sometimes the bugaboos of our jobs.
Okay. Well, okay, well, we haven't implemented anything yet, which is part of.
Theoretically, you have, because the district has asked people to submit coverage based on the old formula.
Well, let me just say, because I've just got to say this. That came about because it's maybe perhaps the misunderstanding of hourly ESSER plus your hourly regular rate of the $60.
And I appreciate that, but I would rather wait 3 days and do it right the first time than do it haphazardly and have to go back and fix it. I mean, I'm frustrated. I want people paid, trust me.
Well, let me say this, and this is where my ire comes in, is that, and I'm thinking about my teachers who've been doing this, and just the fact that the frustration that I sense coming from teachers is that we were told that we would get hourly rate plus $60 an hour. When is that happening?
Hopefully very soon. We may have missed the deadline for the payroll on the 15th. I think we have. Kim's kind of nodding. It closes 5 days early. So if it's not today, it's tomorrow. So my expectation would be at the end of the month. There was a spreadsheet sent out, and I'm gonna give it to Joe.
So what Kevin's referencing is a spreadsheet was shared with principal secretaries. And the spreadsheet was separated into elementary and how to divide, like if you have a 375 and then there was a box, you put how many teachers and then it would tell you how to pay those teachers. But at the secondary level, what it did was it showed how it had like a roundup thing. So like, for example, if a class is 56 minutes, we're gonna pay them for 60 and not try to calculate 56 minutes. But what it did was it put like periods covered, and then it just spit out 60 times the period covered. So if I covered one period, 60 times 1 would be the 60. The spreadsheet did not include a calculation for 60 plus X, which is the hourly rate, times X, which would be a second variable, to put in possible number of periods covered to calculate what the teacher was owed. The only thing it was 6 times X, that variable representing how many classes covered, and the equation did not include variables for hourly rate and number of periods. And so that's where the problem was. It looked like if you were covering a class, you were at the secondary, if you covered for 1 hour, you would just get $60, not 60 plus X equaling your hourly rate.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. I guess perhaps my piece came in is that I contacted payroll when I first saw that initial piece and said, hey, there's some confusion. So if you're talking about that piece now, I know what you're saying. I guess what I was saying but perhaps what was said today is what I told my secretary, let's hold up, I'll contact payroll because there probably needs to be, it still goes back to what I said earlier, there needs to be some revision of the communication because people would potentially do it wrong.
Yeah. The frustration, I guess, is growing again because the last time we met on January 18th, we discussed this and we brought forward the reasons why we were frustrated and everything that Kevin just said and everything that Kyle just said, we talked about on the January 18th meeting. And that's when Rob, I'm paraphrasing, when Rob said, we apologize, what can we do to make it better? Because it wasn't implemented the right way. And we said, well, send out a memo to the principals and the secretary saying, put a hold on until we get this straight. And that was back in January. So almost a month later, we're actually doing the exact same thing as far as what went wrong between our joint communication. And I'm looking at the January 12th, which is a month old, just about. January 12th, joint communication. And it says on there exactly what we're just talking about, that we're trying to make clear, but we did back in January. Eligible employees will receive an additional $60 per hour on top of their regular rate of pay, hourly rate for daily coverage. This is what we discussed last meeting. This is what was voted upon as far as the joint communication on January 12th, and right now, we're basically rehashing the exact same thing, guys. And we said that we gotta move on. And to me, this isn't moving on when we're talking about things that we all agreed on. We're saying the same thing right now, that everyone knew that it was gonna be $60 an hour on top of their hourly rate. We knew it. We knew it on January 12th. We talked about it on January 18th. And we all agreed that what do we need to do to move forward? And we're not moving forward. We're going back.
Well, we are moving forward, and the parties did meet, just so you know. We met on Zoom at least one time. We've had other conversations with your leadership, so this wasn't something that, for the past 3 weeks, we just ignored. In fact, we got to the point where we said, let's pay people at the status quo rate because we were concerned about individuals providing coverage and not getting paid. So there has been efforts from both sides. There's no blame. There was a misunderstanding as to what everything meant. We now have, I think, collectively come to a conclusion as to what we meant, and we're moving forward. So, nothing is perfect, so, and if there's a way to perfect things, we can certainly work towards that. The other piece of this is we would like an MOU on this issue. We've talked to your leadership about that, so we can have documentation exactly as to what we're going to do, so payroll and business services knows exactly what we're implementing. And this is all, in some ways, I hate using the word retroactive because that causes, but we agreed to this going into effect on January 12th. So we still stand by that. It's just taken this long to get to the point where we were able to conclude that we agree on what we're doing. And I hope everyone would understand that, and we can have an agreement here right now and move forward to professional development.
I'm glad you brought up the R word. We need to tackle first semester 2 at some point, but by God, not tonight.
Not tonight. Do it. Okay. So, are we done with the ESSER classroom coverage portion? Bob?
Yeah, is this on? Again, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I think I even had, we're looking at up there on the wall there, I believe that's December 1st. And we had a straw design back on December 1st, correct? We had a consensus, it's on in the minutes because we're missing the options. But we had a consensus on December 1st, on the $60 on top of your hourly rate, on December 1st. And then, that's December 1st now, you're talking 2 months ago, we're pushing 3. And then in January, like I said earlier, we reached consensus again, but we already did in December. And now it's February, we're reaching consensus again. And again, I honestly don't know why it wasn't implemented from the time that we went from December 1st to our joint communication on January 12th to now. And I understand that, yeah, we make mistakes, and we all agreed with that in the last meeting that we had. But we've got to go forward and say, this is what we agreed to in December. We agreed to it in January, joint communication, and we're back to, again, what I said. But that's December 1st, guys. That's a consensus that we reached on December 1st as a straw design with options 2 and 3 and 4. And we went from December 1st up until February 7th. And we're no better off than we were back then.
I think a couple of the things, I mean, I know that the frustration is felt all around. It's teachers, it's administrators, it's district staff, it's school-based staff, it's payroll, it's, staffing, it's budget, it's principal secretaries. Everyone is frustrated by this situation. And I know that one of the problems that we were working to solve was to try and find a way to incentivize people to provide classroom coverage and to reward people who are already providing that classroom coverage. I think that one of the things, and this is going to sound crazy after 24 hours or so of discussion at the table, but I think in our haste, we did not iron out with specificity some of the difference in the terms that we were talking about. Words are used interchangeably that mean different things. Some people are talking about classroom coverage. Some people are talking about instruction during this planning. Some people are talking about splits. All of those things describe different scenarios, and I think what we found out when we sent the joint communication out in January at the start of the second semester was that not having that ironed out, when the rubber meets the road, there's a million different directions that things can go. And especially now that we've kind of flooded our system with people that are interested in providing coverage, some of which hadn't previously expressed an interest, everyone with a different interpretation of what we agreed to. And so any little bit of ambiguity in the language was found, was exploited, and was something that we had to come back and have conversation around to make sure that we're on the same page, because we're talking about roughly, $8-9 million in federal funding. And so I think that's where on some of it does, and I will agree with you, Bob, it does feel redundant. I think there was a gap, though, that needed to be closed, and I think part of the reason for having the conversation tonight was we had 2 weeks in between bargaining sessions. We had 2 weeks that we were off. So, when you're looking at that 2 month period, whatever, there was plenty of time for conversation in between, and that conversation, I think, has taken place. I know I personally have talked to about 25 different principals, each with 5 or 6 novel situations, and that's where I think, again, some of the conversation at labor management around how we're doing it and what's in the best interest of students and staff, that still has to be had. The amounts, though, I think we finally have said, we understand what we agreed to, we can articulate it clearly and consistently, and so that is, finally ironed out after a lot of headaches and hardship in between.
Tina?
So I received an email, a copy of an email that was sent from our secretary to our PCTs and to our coaches, saying that she would like to be able to pay them, but she's told it was put on hold for now until things get settled. Am I missing something? Or are they not able to be paid for the coverage, or does something else need to be worked out or ironed out, please?
So I just will say, without answering that directly, I think emails like that are part of what have caused a lot of the heartache that people are experiencing. And I know that, it's happened kind of on both sides. I know there are district people that have responded to schools saying, hey, I think this is what's going to happen, and then someone forwards it out to the entire school, and then a school across the county is reading that email and taking it as this is gospel. I know the same thing has happened as TALC reps have tried to respond to questions. I think the bottom line is people will get paid. People will get paid according to this new formula that we've agreed to, and it's looking like that will be on the end of February paycheck. And if we have to go back and figure out, what people were owed that they didn't already receive, that's what will happen. I think payroll obviously is going to try and work with schools to find the most efficient, easiest way to do that. There's nothing in it for us to make it more complicated and more difficult than it has to be or than it already has been.
Coaches and PCTs are included though, right?
They're both in that classroom and non-classroom instructional staff, yes.
Tina, I think,
I
think that when the word was sent out to do it under the old rules and status quo, doing it with that, PCTs and coaches were not eligible under the old rules. So that email may have reflected the desire to do it under the old rule, to get it done and to put some money in people's pockets. But like Will said, they are included in the language moving forward and should be paid back to January 12th, 1987. Yeah. So, but I think, you know, in reference to the fact that they weren't under the old formula, so there was no way to account. I'm just trying to logically figure out why somebody would do that, but I think so. Yep.
I was going to say it was nice of you to recognize Will's actual birthday, the day he was born, so.
All right, Bob?
I think that both sides are agreeing the fact that, you know, the teachers want to see something additional in their pockets. I mean, that's what they want. And since August, nothing has happened yet. And I know that we also brought up a $4,000 supplement, bonus, whatever you want to call it. And that would have put money in teachers' pockets. And I don't know why that was brought to the back burner, and we haven't discussed it since then. But that was the goal, was to keep the teachers in school, retain them. We've been saying retaining for years and years and years, retain them. And we come up with a $4,000 figure that we were trying to hash out back a while ago. Whether we wanted to call it bonus or supplement, the retroactivity, I don't like that term, retroactive. We talked about why that shouldn't even be used. And right now it's been put on the back burner, and I don't know why, and I think that we need to bring that up. If right now, if we're talking about February 28th as the target time, well, it may not be until March. And now you're talking 3 months before the end of the year. And I think that right now, we need to bring up the $4,000 right now before we go any further.
Well, I think your leadership suggested that we not discuss that today, so so as to not get into your business, I would like to know what the pleasure of the group is relative to this agreement. If we want to put up an option and agree to it, or proceed from here. I would like us to agree to it, and if, in Bob's words, probably again, but I would like to see us agree to it. Well, my option is what's up there. I can't see it, so it's very difficult for me to.
I have to make 20
It's the daily rate plus the 60 or 75. Okay, so do we have an understanding we've already done that and we're good to go?
That was December, right?
We just need to capture it in the minutes, that's all.
I think we need a caucus. Can I, Kevin?
Yeah, we'll caucus.
Okay.
Overall, I would like to know the expectation making, what was the significant progress?
That wasn't mine.
Oh, okay.
Mine was the hashtag what we were.
It was mine. Okay.
So, since I called it, I'll start. We just kind of charted a path forward and talked about whether or not we really needed to agree with something we think we've already agreed to, or if it's okay to just say, yes, we now have a common understanding, and we can move forward from there and get the MOU signed and get people paid. And we also discussed the need to possibly do minutes next, because obviously we haven't done minutes yet. Not that I want to rush Dr. Martin out of here, but.
I don't want to belabor this, but Kim had a couple payroll questions for TALC regarding implementation, sort of.
I just want to clarify, so any teachers that have worked the month of January, you do not want that paid under the current status quo contract, is that what you're saying? Because we have those, and those are scheduled to be paid on 2/15. So you're saying no to those?
I would prefer it happened once and it happened correctly.
So that's a no.
And so January 11th, when did this start?
12th.
January 12th. So you're telling me that from January, okay, yeah, so that's a month, right? I would prefer it to be done once and done correctly, as opposed to paying out what Will likes to call the candy bar coverage in elementary, which is $5 because you had 3 kids for 20 minutes, and then have to figure out we owe you $87.62.5 at a time certain later.
Okay, I just want that clarified, because when
That's fine.
January 15th comes up.
I'll take the heat on that. Tell them I would rather do it once.
Okay.
And do it correctly, and not have to worry about people putting their principal secretary and their principal in the middle of, did I get what I needed? How much money was it supposed to be? We need to.
Okay.
But I think Anna has a clarifying question if you don't have anything else.
Anna?
So what if a principal, because I've been working with my principal secretary, and I know that she received an email from payroll that had new payroll lines for the new ESERB way of paying split. So what if she has already submitted supplements the correct way? Are we saying we're holding those off as well?
Well, there's no correct way yet. Only thing that changed was the earnings code, so Kelly can track it. There's no new account line or anything for this funding. I just created a new earnings code for it, so she can track it by the earnings code.
So to clarify again, there is not an account line on the payroll side to even pay this out to begin with, regardless of the language.
Correct, it would just go under the old account line, and that's why there's a new earnings code, so she can grab it and move it where Kelly needs to move it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so do we need to make an action, or we just need to, I don't even know what to do with this, to be honest with you.
Minutes.
It's in the minutes.
Well, we need to do,
We're gonna do an MOU.
we need to do minutes, approve minutes.
Oh, approve minutes from the past sessions, okay,
I
yes.
believe we are still behind
We are.
significantly.
We don't have them from last session, but we have them from the previous 3 sessions, I believe.
Can I just ask, I don't know how many edits, but rather than reading them into like the record, if you guys have them written down, do we want to, like, are there any that need to be discussed if there's typos and that sort of thing? I mean, I'd hate to spend the remainder of the time that we have referencing page numbers where we, put an E on the end of a word and use the Old English spelling. I don't know, I'm asking if there's, like, what kind of feedback we have on the minutes. I know typically Bob and Kerr catch a lot of stuff, and so
Yeah, I'm not gonna point out any grammatical errors. Let's go to the meat and potatoes here. I think that December 1st one, we need to take a look at, because that's the one that it was missing some crucial options in there that we don't even have in there. And I think that led to about a half an hour wasted time tonight discussing what was done back in December. And I believe that it was, let me see if I can find the right page, and Will, help me too if you can find it.
While I'm looking for that, one of the other things that we were trying to work on was like a cheat sheet with all of the options and straw designs on there, so that it would make it easier, because I think there were 18 or so minutes and 7 or 8 different straw designs. And so for everyone's sake, to have a 1 or 2 page thing that you could look at and see, okay, here's the minute, or here's the options, here's the straw designs, here's what options are in what straw designs. So we have that too. I don't think we shared that out though. That was still a work in progress.
Okay. I know on page 8 of December 1st, option 2, it's blank in the minutes. And I believe that Amy has it up on the wall there. So I don't know if Amy wants to read it, unless you have it, Will.
What is on the screen? 10.041, proposed language. That's 2.
And also, this option 3 is missing on page 9.
3 is include voluntary coverage language from existing 10.04 4A.
And that was crucial because option 2, 3, and 4 were the straw design that we reached consensus on. So this is what's taken us some time tonight to go back. And I believe on January 4th, we're missing options on number 19. I believe that was page 3, Will. I mean, to me, those were the major ones. I'm not gonna even look for any misspelled words.
Kevin?
I think for me, the minutes and the significance of our being behind on the minutes is fundamentally problematic, because if we have a disagreement, one of the places we go is to the minutes. And so if the minutes are not approved, are not presented in a timely fashion, not approved in a timely fashion, and not accurate in their presentation, we run the risk of extending the confusion. I mean, we really need to have the minutes and be up to date and be like current on the minutes so that it's fresh in people's minds. I have Kerr's edits here to the minutes. He sat today and did his edits based on what he had in his notebook. But if we're talking about December minutes approved in February, that's a lot of time to where people could, forget or not know to say the option was missing. And so, again, one of the norms we have is to have minutes, I think, the Thursday before the Monday. And, we understand early on there were some staffing problems, but we need to get back to where we're getting the minutes in a timely fashion, because I'm concerned that we're approving minutes that we don't really remember what happened. And then if something happens, thank goodness we're recording and posting, we at least have that. But if we weren't doing that, how would the disagreement get solved? By minutes that you provided 2 months late and we can't really remember because it's been 2 months? So, you know, the minutes thing is a real bone of contention on this side of the table from a practical approach.
I can tell you too, I mean, again, and I know we've brought this up, we are a very small department, have been short-staffed, have had turnover. The minutes will be quicker moving forward now that we are fully staffed. I think, I don't know, I feel the same in terms of it's difficult to resume. I think it's, you know, we're a month later from the last time, so, you know, if we were a month behind in getting the minutes out, we're now a month later in approving them. I know we've talked about, is there some way to do some of it with Google Docs so that it's up there, everyone can see it, you know, it's there, so that you're not waiting around on, you know, us, people can provide feedback and edits, because it does make it more difficult when you're trying to remember things that happened a month ago or that you last talked about a month ago that happened 2 months ago. And I think all of that on top of the fact that this was one of the most complicated in recent memory in terms of, again, 19 options, 7 different straw designs. We didn't follow the interest-based process initially in terms of snapshots and that kind of stuff. Procedurally, I don't want to do this again, and I think that's what you're saying too, is you guys feel the same.
And I think some of the frustration over here is schools aren't fully staffed. Teachers are covering, learning results are expected, and quite honestly, nobody cares to extend, you know, things still need to happen when they need to happen for the students in the classrooms, even though they're understaffed and overworked and have greater expectations than ever. And so it's a high level of frustration around not having the minutes in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I would just say message received. Will has had staffing issues in his department, not an excuse. I would also say that Will is with me an awful lot. So I know he's not working on minutes independently. So message received. We will endeavor to do better because it will only help both of our sides. So thanks.
Yeah, there's just one more thing that I had found my notes dating back to the December 6th bargaining on actually it's on the very first page.
December 6th or 1st?
December 6th.
Okay.
And the first bullet under story in Article 10, when Dr. Desimore was giving her report, she provided a presentation to the bargaining team on compensation. And then it says an electronic copy of the presentation will be provided to both bargaining teams, see attached. I don't know where that attached is. I don't know where that is. I mean, so I think what Kevin was saying, as far as the flowing of these sessions that we have, they flow. And normally tonight we would be talking about what happened on January 14th minutes. And because we don't have them, the flowing is stopped, and it's not that consistent flow. And going back to December 6th, and I made notes of that probably when we first received these back about, I don't know, a month ago maybe, we got these. And I had a note about it, and I just found it just now about that C attached, and I don't know what that is. Well,
we typically don't attach presentations when we pass out the minutes because we don't always have them from whoever the presenter was. We will attach that, we will send that out. I mean, unless someone corrects me and tells me otherwise, I don't think there's ever been any issue about needing to edit what a presenter presented. I think we pretty much take the PowerPoint presentation, include it in its entirety, which is, again, something we can improve on moving forward.
So as far as minutes, do we want to, how do we want to process or proceed with this? Do we go ahead and approve them with corrections now, or do we wait till the corrections are made?
The TALC's pleasure, but we're certainly willing to approve them now with the corrections to be made.
I think now with the corrections made is pleasure of this side of the table as well.
Thumbs up. Approve the minutes with the corrections to be made. So everybody's okay. Good. So, the next thing we have on the agenda.
Professional development monthly. Okay. Will, you want to give some background?
So where do we
No, I think we already have the snapshot. I will give as quick of a rundown as I can. Basically, we had an interest in adding an article on professional development. Dr. Martin and I, along with Amy, sat and drafted what we think reflects the current commitment of the district as it relates to professional development. That language was developed in consideration of some of the requirements that the state puts on the district for professional development. We shared that information through labor management. I believe a copy was shared with everyone, and that people have had time to review that. I think the one thing that was flagged for conversation, or at least that we were told was a topic that people wanted to discuss, was the distinction between voluntary and mandatory training and the rate that's provided for that. The voluntary training rate has not been touched in a number of years, and I think is currently at $15 an hour. Obviously, that's incredibly low for what it is that we're asking people to do, but that's kind of the long and short of the discussion that's taken place to date. I think Dr. Martin and her team had kind of done some math and maybe had a proposal or recommendation of a place to start.
And I don't know if you guys want to throw, because I don't think everybody has it, because it was kind of disseminated a considerable amount of time ago. So if you want to throw up kind of the proposed starting points on the screens for everybody to read.
Is it just one thing? Yeah, it's one thing.
Once you know what it looks like, it's easier to find.
Okay, so we have the language up on the board. Anyone start a discussion on this? Can you provide more background? Any questions?
I think, Dr. Burton, if you could, and Will may have already done it, but the idea around the rate of pay, 14.03 compensation, and we can maybe start the discussion there around mandatory versus voluntary and what currently is happening and what we're moving forward maybe with.
So it's my understanding what's currently happening, if a school is offering training outside of contract hours that they designate to be mandatory, then they are paying teachers their hourly rate for attending. And then there's voluntary training, which is training that oftentimes teachers enroll in and take above and beyond their normal workday and above and beyond their normal mandatory training days. And so that the voluntary training rate, it's our common interest to increase the rate from $15 an hour to $25 an hour in order to recognize the commitment that teachers are putting in for their professional development above and beyond their contract time, as well as to provide increased incentives for teachers to take some of the professional development that they need in order to fulfill career ladder buckets or just to continue to grow and develop professionally. We recognize that, I believe it was $15 an hour when I started teaching, and if you pay a babysitter, then you are in the negative at the current voluntary training rate. So I did a comprehensive review of 3 years of data, looking back at what the voluntary training rate has been paid for and how much. And the majority of the funding has really come out of some of our grant funding for the voluntary training rate, and $25 an hour was an amount that we could sustain through grant funding for training that teachers take above and beyond what's mandatory and provided at the school. So an example might be, we have a great class tonight that's happening, not required for anyone to take, just if you see it advertised on Monday PD notifications and you want to take it and sign up, is Google Classroom for asynchronous student engagement. So we have about 50 people taking that tonight, and they're eligible for that. So that would be an example.
Jill?
So I want to talk about where it says 14.033 scheduling. So in reading that, it says professional development may be scheduled for the summer break, Thanksgiving break, winter break, or spring break. And so I have a concern with that. And so here's the thing, and I think I should ask, are you talking like there could be, for example, a course that I'm taking and it could just run over that time, or would you schedule like on the Monday, Tuesday of Thanksgiving break or the week of spring break, would there be like in-person trainings or a course would just kind of like how, okay. Because my concern with that was I didn't want to see teachers be put in a position to do professional development when we need to encourage them to take a break. And so I wanted to just clarify that.
yes, we would not intentionally schedule training on those times. And also our goal with scheduling training would be to have the most attendees and participants as possible. And if we schedule them on those days, we probably will not get a great turnout for that. So we have a common interest there.
Okay, thank you.
And so for me, the big rub is, because this does away with the mandatory training, correct, rate, or no?
So it doesn't have anything in there about voluntary or mandatory training. It says that $25 per hour is for anything that's outside of your regularly scheduled work hours. So that would be if you're, working a full day at school and then coming down here for teach training. There are some of that stuff that takes place during the course of the school day. There's the preschool in-service stuff that goes on, and so that's kind of the distinction there. I think that answers the question.
So the answer is yes, it does away with mandatory?
It doesn't talk about voluntary or mandatory. It talks about that's the rate if you're asked to do training outside of your workday or you're doing training outside of your workday.
So mandatory and voluntary would be at the same rate then?
If it's outside of your workday, yes.
Okay, that's problematic for me. And I think we can discuss what meets the requirement of mandatory. Like I said, I've heard from teachers who have been told to take an ESE training and they be on contract hours, and they asked about pay, and their principal said, well, you get the ESE supplement, so I'm not required to pay you. And so I think there's a lot of gamesmanship. In my personal example of, I'm the ESE teacher, the district brought the great new computerized IEP program. I'm required to do it, to do my job and to do IEPs. The training I was told to take was not mandatory, even though it was germane on me being able to do my job. So, and I see a bunch of hands on my left here.
Well, then I get to see who's up first. Anna, Tina? Oh, Anna, okay.
So I think one of the other things that came up as we were discussing this and mandatory training includes the asbestos training. And so, there are some schools where you're doing that during the preschool week, you're doing that on your own time, you're pressing play during your planning and, listening in and, less active in your participation, or so I've heard. I'm always engaged in the conversation about friable and non-friable if anyone wanted to know. But I think again that's the mandatory voluntary. I think gets hard to separate in terms of, is it mandatory to keep my job? Is it mandatory to keep my certificate? Is it mandatory because my boss told me to? Is it mandatory because of the course that I'm teaching? There are times that I think you could say, no, it's voluntary, but if you don't do it, you don't maintain your certificate. I think, again, part of the thought was to try and move away from that and say, if you're doing it outside of your workday, you need to be paid for that time.
Yeah, I'm just looking in the current contract right now, and when Kevin says it's problematic, I definitely agree with him. It doesn't say the word mandatory, it says required. So if you're required to attend a training, you're going to be paid according to your current base rate of pay. And attending voluntary, then you're getting $15 an hour. Well, if we agree to this, then a person that was doing the mandatory or required, whatever you want to call it, would be acting, they were making more than $25 an hour, they're actually getting shortchanged. And I don't know why we would change the current contract for those people to get less, but increase the compensation for the voluntary training and maybe we could come up with a different way of doing it other than that. And now, I don't know that $25 per hour, and Helen, you're talking about the fact that it was a grant. My question would be, when it was paid $15 an hour, it wasn't probably paid with a grant, but I'm not sure. And if it was, then I would not want to see the required trainings, if I was gonna go to a required training, and I would now get less than I would be getting now.
I think one of the things, and I'll say this quickly because I want to make sure that Helen can answer too, but I think one of the things that we encountered was you and I could be sitting next to each other in a training, and because your boss told you that you needed to attend a classroom management training, but I chose to go there because I recognized the need myself, we could be both paid different rates for attending the exact same training. And that's even regardless of who's been here, longer, where we're at. So I think that was another interest.
And one of the pieces that we've come across in it, and we've seen this in feedback from the career ladder surveys and the teacher professional development surveys, is that there's not typically a lot of time reserved in the workday for professional development for teachers. And I want to commend the calendar committee for adding more time in to the workday next year for teachers to engage in professional development, because I believe that's part of the issue as well, just in terms of everyone only has so many hours in the day, and you have life to do and you have the teaching to do, so just embedding time in the workday as well for teachers to engage in professional development. We're all working together.
Anna? And then Jill.
So that was the perfect segue into the question I had. I was trying to save it so I wasn't like in the middle jumping in of a conversation. But we do have those 4 PD early dismissal days in the calendar. So I don't know if, I don't see any language either in this PD article, and those days definitely are not captured in the current contract. While we do have an outline what happens on a preschool day, there is a professional duty day, but what happens on those early, what is the expectation on those early PD days? Is it like I can do it on my own thing? I mean, I would assume that there would be flexibility if a principal wanted to bring something in. I just know that looking at it, and I don't know the intent of the calendar committee, to me just looks like a lot coming out of something unknown. There's 4 days. What does that look like? I know a lot of people tend to kind of like to have guidelines and structure to that, so that way they are honored in the way that they were intended.
I didn't know if somebody wanted to, maybe somebody from the calendar committee or somebody from PD wanted to, because my topic is something different, so I didn't know if anybody would like to explain that information so that it's recorded in the minutes. I know Amy's on the calendar committee, Will's on the calendar committee.
I can try and respond to that, and thank you guys for helping keep some of the conversation. Yeah, that'll make it a lot easier for minutes. One of the things that we did talk about in calendar committee was the addition of those days for professional development. I don't know that we developed guidelines yet in terms of what that professional development portion of the day will look like. So I will leave that to Dr. Martin. I will say though, and this is again kind of building off of what she said a moment ago, with some of the career ladder stuff, one of the things that I think professional development has done really well is giving people their time back and making sure that professional development is meaningful, that it's job embedded, that you have flexibility. Not everything requires you to drive to the district office on a Thursday night and watch, me flip through PowerPoints and drone on and tell bad jokes. Some of it you can do the same thing, but from the comfort of your home. So I think again, that's something that, they deserve, recognition for. The other portion of that is with the career ladder. I know that, people several years ago, 25 hours to recertify, there were people that were struggling. I think they have said that now we're seeing more and more people with 40 plus hours of professional development. And then you have, kind of the overachiever types that are 60 or more hours. So I think, again, people are consuming the professional development that's being offered. And so, that's another thing as we change our approach to try and continue to do, like Anna was saying, something that honors different types of learners, different types of, schedules, preferences, that kind of stuff.
I believe part of the preliminary thinking, of course, the preliminary structure and guidelines for the early release days hasn't been formalized yet, but the preliminary thinking, many of our grade levels next year in subject areas will have new standards, new curriculum, and then new assessments that are coming through. So some of the professional development that would be available at the school would support teachers in the implementation of all that is new. And then the teacher survey that we conducted in December reflected a great interest on behalf of teachers in some of that professional development. And I know this team does a great job of serving as mentors to many of our new teachers. We continue to hire new teachers throughout the school year as well, and they need continued professional development and support in just the way the school works, and then onboarding and acclimating to their role, as well as opening it up for whatever the needs are of the school, and then providing some on your own time too, because we all have certain requirements we need to do for recertification, mandatory learning, or career ladder, or a variety of other options.
Jill, did you want to comment? Yes, thank you. And I will say, as someone on the calendar committee, Amy did ensure us and Lynn ensured us that there would be guidance from PD about how that time would be used to ensure that it was appropriately used in the schools. So now I'm going to move on. So what I'm sharing in my comments, actually, so if anybody came in later, didn't remember, Kerr and Sam and Shay are on Zoom. And so Kerr posted something in the chat on Zoom, and I wanted to share it. So this is really Kerr through Jill. So Kerr brought up, because Bob has brought up topics about what we're paying and how the amounts are changing. And so Kerr pointed out that at some point a few years ago, maybe even like 8 or 10 years ago, we indexed supplements. So supplements, Will had to do a lot of math and figure out what the current amount was. Mike Gatewood had to do a lot of math. Somebody had to do a lot of math. Yeah, you know what, it probably was Gatewood. Somebody had to do a lot of math to figure out that at the time, the football coach's supplement was a certain percentage of a new teacher's salary. And now every time we raise the new teacher's salary, supplements go up based on the percentage that was calculated. And so what Kerr is wondering is, could we look into possibly indexing what we pay for our training rates? So it would be a certain percentage of a new teacher's salary. And then as new teacher's salary goes up, the pay rate could increase. And he wanted to share that as a possible thought or something to look at. I know Helen did explain that you projected a cost over time. So that was just something Kerr wanted me to share.
I think, and I'll give the mic back to Helen. I think that $25 an hour is roughly where we were at for base pay for $40,000 a year. I know one of the things that we've talked about, and this is something again that we're working with professional development, is to do exactly what you just described. Trainers are the same, and for a while we had people that were being paid more to attend a training than to present to the training. And so that's also a part of this, but I think, looking long term, I think that would be our desire would be, it shouldn't be less than the
the minimum hourly rate for someone in the bargaining unit. We've also talked about, if there's a way to try and standardize, align, do something similar with SPALC, other employee groups, because again, I think the goal is to encourage everyone to be lifelong learners and to, invest in their professional development or skills, development in whatever way we can.
I'm concerned about the lack of guardrails related to training. So right now, and this is going to be a rather blunt way to talk about it, the thing that most keeps trainings from being mandatory is the fact that it's not 15, but it's the hourly rate. And so, as much as I think we need to talk about what is mandatory and, reel that in, I think sometimes when they look at trainings, there is a cost to provide a training, and so the current voluntary rate is considerably less. It's half of what a new teacher's hourly rate is. I'm just concerned that at $25 an hour and no guardrails on how many times a principal or the district can say something is mandatory, we may get in a situation where everything's mandatory. And so, I don't suspect that's going to come from, a lot of places down here, but there are people who will engage in that behavior. So again, I think we need to have some guardrails and some expectations.
We have a process in professional development to determine what is considered mandatory learning, and those are all the lovely courses that you are auto-enrolled in on July 1st each year through PeopleSoft. But that process of identification, what is mandatory learning, really comes through a review of board policy, comes through a review of applicable statute, as well as comes through a review of any agreements the district might have entered into with other entities. And that process typically then comes through an annual review. I know we've briefed labor management several times of courses that we were adding to that suite of mandatory learning. And then part of that is also looking at the list to see, has the statute changed? Has the board policy changed? Has the agreement changed? Where there are courses that can be removed from that suite of mandatory learning for different employee groups.
But at the school level, is there something right now that stops the principal from telling everybody, mark your calendars, because June 1st and 2nd, we're going to have a training? Is there anything because that happened last week. And so, again, it's that idea of, yeah, it's voluntary, but I'm telling you now to mark your calendars and we're having this great training. And so again, is there something at the school level that kind of puts those guardrails up?
That training would not be considered mandatory learning according to our current definition, but then I'll probably defer to another team member in terms of the admin directive.
If it's outside of their contract days, it's not mandatory. They can't make them go.
But yeah, I just picked those days as an example. Jill told me they're half days. I was on the old calendar. Okay, but yeah. But again, according to what you just said, Dr. Martin, the only trainings that are mandatory are trainings we don't currently get compensated for. Because those safe schools don't come with compensation.
I believe it would be the expectation to complete them during the window of contract time for those.
Okay. I just have kind of a data thing before Will goes. Is there any way we can see how many hours were paid out at people's hourly rate? Because there have to have been classes that were paid at the hourly rate that weren't the mandatory defined kind of safe schools training. And I know that won't happen tonight, but
I will say, and I'm looking at Kim on that. I would say some of that might depend on how people enter it, and that's another one of the challenges that we have. There's an earnings code that's basically all other duties. If you're doing professional development under all other duties, it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to find which of those were professional development, because it gets put into a comments field and there's not an easy way to search that, and you could put it in different literally for every single one of those people. I think some of this helps streamline that and maybe would help produce better data moving forward to answer that. One of the things I was going to say to build on what Dr. Martin just said about the mandatory training stuff is we have had the discussion about some of those legacy trainings and how it is that every year, you know, bloodborne pathogens and fire extinguisher training, you know, has become the norm, as opposed to some, you know, recurring principles of professional conduct or protecting Florida's children, which you get once at the start of your career and then, you know, never again unless you have an issue and, you know, need that remedial training. And so again, I think all of those conversations are also occurring. I think one of the hopes for this language, again, is that it will spark the conversation, and some of those things that you guys have mentioned will maybe get examined, or that we'll have the data to look at them more closely, because as it stands right now, none of this language is in the contract, you know, including the survey of asking employees, what would you like training on? I think Dr. Martin and her team have started to do some of that already. That seems like that would be an obvious thing to ask people. Where do you think you need, or where would you like to see training? One of the other things, just to point to in terms of guardrails, like Kevin mentioned, is labor management. I know there have been requests already with some of the data and the registration of PD with pass keys and stuff to do a poll and say, hey, I heard that someone was doing, you know, Christmas Day training. Is that true? We can pull it and we can say, you know, no, actually it was Christmas Eve training, and it was at the request of teachers, and, you know, investigate that situation, you know, as a one-off. Again, I'm hoping that we don't have too many of those, but I know that, you know, they're watching it. I know that they've gotten feedback on, hey, there was this evening training the other day, and, you know, we're reviewing the comments and it seems like something funny happened, so we're going to ask some questions and find out what really went on, and look at do we have that evening training moving forward. But Kim, I don't know if you can respond to their question about people receiving training pay at their hourly rate. Is that all? The data request was how many people have received their hourly rate for training. And I'm saying I don't know if we have it captured that way. We can pull that. Okay.
I mean, I'm just, unless there's some funny business, it sounds like nobody is. Because the only trainings that are required are the safe school trainings, and they are expected to be done during our contract day. And every other training out there must be voluntary. But I bet you're gonna find people pay their hourly rate. And so again, I'm with Bob. I'm hesitant to take away the hourly rate for mandatory training until we come to the conclusion about because again, I might argue that if I have a certificate and I have to maintain it to keep my employment, the certification, the classes I take to maintain my certificate are much like the certification you and Rob would have to take to maintain your JD, or, you know, what a physician would have to take, or one of my special instructional group would have to take to maintain their professional certification. So I would argue that that is not required training as required by the employer. That is training the employee is required to take to continue to be an employee. So, I mean, I just am hesitant to take away that mandatory option if we don't, again, because I'm sure somebody's getting their hourly rate. It's just too big a district with too many trainings for it to be a no.
I think, I guess two things, just because I know we're kind of tight on time. The first would be, one big distinction is when I take my CLE, I pay for it. I have to take time off from work. I have to pay for hotels. It's not the same. My employer doesn't cover those expenses currently. The other thing, though, is I think from what you guys are saying, it seems like in looking at the language, we've got everything except for this 14.034 kind of resolved. And so I'm wondering if there's any appetite with 10 minutes to go to put up an option and test with that one piece being something that we would come back with data and discuss at the next meeting.
Let's work an option to take a look at the PD article with the exception of re-examining 14.034. Okay.
Honestly, I think, well, yeah, I mean, I would want to kind of talk with my group about whether we wanted to do this or not, and that may take the remaining, I mean, I'm just thinking, I mean, again, like, I've got a group here, and I'd want to poll them before we did anything. And so that would take some time outside as to whether or not we wanted, I mean, I understand the intent of solving everything but the compensation part, I get that, but if we solve everything and then for some reason aren't able to solve the compensation part, the solving of everything else, I think, is immaterial or moot.
Well, I think the compensation part would stay status quo if we can't agree to a change. But do you want to take 5 minutes and poll your group in a caucus, or?
This is a new article, so are we talking about plucking it from where it currently is in the contract if it's status quo and moving it here? Because we don't have an Article 14 currently, this was brand new.
Right, but it's in 10.3, professional development. That's what my referral was to.
Yeah, I think we should take 5 or 6 minutes in the hallway to figure out what we want to do next.
Okay.
But you're doing it.
We do, and we just, honestly, we feel uncomfortable moving forward tonight. And I know, Dr. Martin, you're here, and you took time out, and it's nice to see you. But we're a little uncomfortable tonight, kind of moving forward with this. We've got some unanswered questions as well, so we can address that next time.
All right, so do we start here next time? Is that where you're at?
I think we start with the minutes.
Right, okay.
And then we can talk more about kind of direction, because I have an idea.
Okay.
And I've talked to my team about it, about moving forward in a significant way.
And we can talk Wednesday about
Yes.
it. Okay, good.
All right, well, with that, I guess, over here. All right. I think we are meeting the 15th.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Next time I'll be back, I'll be 40.